Um, Good evening, everybody. I'm Leanne Symonds and I'm head teacher at Ringwood School. I've been head teacher there since 2016, so that sort of period where things really have changed with smartphones. And over the last year, particularly, I've really radically changed my view on smartphones and young people and their use of smartphones. And therefore, our school policies have shifted. So I want to share with you sort of the things that I've been looking at over the last few months and the reasons that I've changed our policy at school. And I'm really hoping to work with all of our feeder schools as well so that we can drip feed the message down so that we're starting to impact upon children at a much younger age. I'm also the mother of two teenage children. My son went to Andy's school, so Andy was his head teacher for a while, and that becomes relevant sort of later on. And therefore, the things that I've been reading and thinking about, I thought about as a mother as well as a head teacher. Now, and as Andy says, when sort of smartphones first came in, kind of 2012, most schools managed them quite effectively. At Ringwood, we had and still have a kind of not to be seen or heard policy. So they're away in bags, they're switched off during the day. But I always feel it's really important for a young person, particularly when you have a rural catchment like we have, to be able to have a device so the parents can contact them if there's an emergency going to school and coming home again. And certainly as a mother, that's something that I've always wanted my children to be able to have. I don't think I've ever contacted them, but it's just that sort of security to know that if something went wrong, if the bus broke down or something happened, that actually you would be able to communicate with your child and they'd be able to communicate with you. And that policy has gone along quite happily. And then we hit COVID, and I think COVID radically changed things. And in many ways, the technology that we had really came to the fore and really provided great solutions for the problems that we had when we were all in our homes and we were having to educate children suddenly overnight as a school in this dispersed way that we'd never ever done before. And as a school, like many other schools, we embraced the use of Microsoft Teams. And that just grew and developed, and we learned how to teach children remotely. We learned how to set assignments, and now at school we use Teams to set assignments. That's how homework's set. It's a really good and useful way of being able to set something. It's there for children if they haven't quite written it down at the end of a lesson like they used to in the old days. It doesn't get lost in translation. You can put support material for children up. You can put your PowerPoints up. You can give them every help to enable them to be able to learn really effectively away from the classroom like you do normally when it's home learning. Or if, and again, we haven't had one of these in the current year, sort of post-COVID era, the snow day, no longer would that have to be a day where there was no learning. Although I have to say, I would just be encouraging everybody to go out into the snow. But there are some real benefits to mobile technology and the things that we can now do. And certainly as a school, like all schools, we've really embraced them. And we really saw the benefits. However, in the last 2 or 3 years, we have begun to see a real difference. And for a long time, we just put that down to COVID. Oh, it's post-COVID. Oh, it's kids post-COVID. It's the impact they've had. It's just what's happened. But the years roll by, and COVID now is quite a long time ago. And actually, things are getting worse. They're not getting better. And you begin to stop and relook at the situation and begin to think about, actually, is this COVID that's causing this? So, for example, earlier this year, I was doing a report for my governors at school, and I was looking at the number of suspensions. And I was looking at the number of suspensions around year 7 and year 8, which 10 years ago, absolutely unheard of. Would you agree? Absolutely unheard of. And comparing it from suspensions to year 10 and year 11, kind of where typically your suspensions would have come. And the whole data was completely on its head. It's completely different to how it used to be. Now, the issues are happening in year 7 and year 8. And then you dig into that data a little bit more and you see so often it's for the use of prejudicial language, which at our school is always a suspension because we try really hard to make sure that that behaviour is heavily discouraged so that we have an inclusive and a safe environment. And where is that language coming from? You sit with parents, you talk to parents, and Andy alluded to it earlier on. talking about social media and the type of content that's on social media, and children coming across words they don't understand and just reusing those words and then getting a really serious consequence. And we have put so much education into, the understanding of those words, why we don't use those words, what those words mean, all of those things at school. But we cannot overcome this huge tide of information that's on the internet, that's getting into children's phones, into children's pockets, really in a really dangerous way. So we've seen that happening. My pastoral team have been dealing with lots of incidents. So Andy has shared a couple of the incidents that, of course, we deal with at schools because the children come to school. So even though the thing has happened in the middle of the night on devices that we didn't buy for children, the issues come into school the next day. And it's your classic is the sleepover when someone sent a message to someone because kids are in little groups together. We also have huge issues with WhatsApp groups because you can put just over 200 people, I think, on a WhatsApp group. So there is the Year 7 WhatsApp group with all of them on. And actually, everybody's got different boundaries with how they use that. And there are so many messages. It's really overwhelming. So we're seeing kids really struggling with that need to keep up with messages. You know what it's like some of you may know, some of you may not know what it's like on your phone. If you've got messages that are unopened and you can see your icons and the numbers going up and you just feel like you need to get yourself sort of abreast of what's happened, that's happening and it's creating lots of anxiety. The number of children now with anxiety disorders, the number of children that don't feel they can come to school because they are at such a high level of anxiety, all of those things are snowballing in the last 2 or 3 years. And therefore, we began to think about, can this just be COVID or is it something else? And then for me, the real game changer this year was the programme Swiped. I don't know if anybody watched Swiped earlier in the year. Yeah. If you've not seen it, it's probably still on All 4. I would definitely watch it on catch up. I watched it over Christmas on catch up, and it's 2 episodes, and it's Emma and Matt Wills, and they go into a school with a group of Year 8 students, and they all give their phones up for 21 days, and then they monitor students and they're kind of the period they go through where they're grieving the loss of their phone. And then actually they're doing other stuff and they're hanging out with their parents more, they're hanging out with their friends more, they're sleeping more, they're feeling better about life. And all of these things come out. And the whole project was watched very closely by the University of York. And there were really tangible and obvious benefits. But there were other things in the programme as well, which were so impactful, I thought. So in both episodes, Emma and Matt visited the parents of children who had died because of their use of social media. And in the first episode, a boy had come across a Japanese suicide forest and just could not move on from that. He was seeing things that he just couldn't unsee. And that's the problem, isn't it? Once you see something that's terribly distressing, you can't unsee it. And eventually he took his own life, 11 years old. In the next episode, they covered the story of one of the boys, Isaac, who died with the TikTok challenge, the blackout challenge. So he had been trying the blackout challenge and it had gone terribly wrong for him and he died. And Matt and Emma Willis went to the house and sat and talked to the parents, and they were showing pictures of Isaac. And the thing for me was the similarity. These are just people like you and like me, parents like you and like me, who care deeply and love deeply their children, have tried to do all the right things. The pictures that they showed of Isaac, there was one with him jumping in the swimming pool. I have got an almost identical picture of my son doing the same thing. There's a picture of him sat on the garden furniture with his spaniel. Again, I have got a picture of my son, almost exactly the same thing. And it really made me feel that any of us could be in this situation. This is something that children aren't asking for. This is something that's being pushed and forced on children. It's not some children experimenting. This is happening to our children, and they are the victims at the heart of this. And we really have to do something. There was also another little section in the Swiped programme where Emma and Matt had a completely clean TikTok profile. And on the profile, they'd been set up as 2 13-year-old girls. And it took 10 minutes before the algorithms to kick in and show them content, really distressing content of an incident of domestic violence. And over the top of the images was the 999 call that the daughter in the house had made because her father was beating her mother up. And that nobody wants to see something like that. And nobody who's young, I mean, as far as the phone was concerned, Matt was 13 years old. 13-year-old is not capable of dealing with something like that and seeing something like that. I wouldn't want to see something like that. And so I came back after Christmas, having watched that, feeling like we had to do something. Many of the people that were interviewed on the Swipe programme, they echoed the same message again and again, and you've heard it from Andy as well, that we have to do it collectively. This is not something we can do on our own. And every single time, people would say, it's got to be parents. And then the second word out of everybody's mouth was, it's got to be schools. And I feel as a head of a school, I've got some agency to be able to do something. I had remembered back as well in thinking, what are we going to do? How on earth are we going to tackle this? Because this is a real and present danger for our young people. I remembered back to when my son started at Andy's school and he was only allowed a brick phone. And that began to make me think, well, he survived quite happily just with a brick phone. I wonder whether we actually just shift this and we say you can't have phones in year 7. Alongside the swiped information, I went back to this book. I don't know if you've read this one. This is Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation. And Jonathan Haidt talks about smartphones stealing our children's childhood. And he talks about 4 foundational harms. And one of them is the amount of time that children spend with their friends. And I didn't show you the graphs. I didn't bring any slides tonight. But if you look to his graphs, you can see over time, but particularly from 2012 onwards, this huge falling off of the amount of time, the amount of minutes every day. Oh, brilliant. You've got it. Fabulous. So look at that. Isn't that incredible? Look at the blue line. Those are young people. Look at how their interaction with their friends has just dropped off. And that is because they're going home to be on their devices. And then they're hanging out in a completely different way. He's got this lovely picture on his website, if you did happen to go on his website, where he's got an old-fashioned childhood with, it's like the countryside and there's a map and somebody's probably got some ginger beer. And then there's the new one where it's all dark and a child sat on their own and they've got all of these different messages kind of around them. And it's completely lonely. And our young people say they're lonelier than they've ever been before. So that's Jonathan's first harm. The second harm is about sleep deprivation and the amount of children who are getting 7 hours or less of sleep a night is going up and up and up. So there are fewer children that are well rested and ready for their day and ready for all of those interactions and everything that a normal day for a child means. And we've always given the same advice, Andy, that you were referring to, that you have a bowl or something in the kitchen, everybody's device goes in there, you have a power down and that just stays there and there's no devices in bedrooms. However, and that used to work very, very well. What we found this year, though, is where parents have followed that advice to the letter and done everything they can do and all the advice that they've been given, is that the young person then goes down into the kitchen and retrieves their device as soon as they wake up. And now there are so many messages on there that the child feels. And I've had this example. I've sat with parents and with young people when we've tried to talk about why are you so late to school? Because they don't feel they can go into school until they've caught up. All this stuff's happened overnight where they've not been involved and they've got to catch up. And that anxiety of, I don't know what's happened and I don't know what's going on and I've got to go through all these messages really quickly is one thing that is really discouraging children from coming to school. It's just far too much for them. On the Swipes programme, there's one student who does describe herself as a prolific mobile phone user, and she says overnight she once had 3,000 messages because of these big group chats, which I thought was mind-blowing. Until I came across a story at the beginning of June in the Bristol Evening Post where it was a primary school, it was a year 6 teacher, and the rule in that school was that if you had your mobile phone, and lots of year 6 students do, you just put the phone on the teacher's desk. And then something had happened during the day. I think the child had gone home ill and thus had not collected their phone. So teacher goes home, does their normal thing, arrives back in. When they got back to their desk, about 8 o'clock the next morning, there were 9,000 messages on that phone. 9,000 messages. I mean, the world's gone mad. So that primary school and the MAT that it's in, the Multi-Academy Trust that is in, has now banned mobile phones in the primary era. So all of this is moving at speed. These are things that we've never seen before, and they're real problems for our young people. The next foundational harm that Jonathan talks about is attention deficit. And Andy's talked about that distraction away from kind of your learning and your concentration. And I don't know if you've come across the research, but even if your phone pings and you don't look at it, even for us, it still takes you 13 minutes to get back to the level of concentration and kind of flow that you had before that went off, even if you don't look. And there is some research, which is from, I think it's from the University of Texas, that shows your cognitive ability if your phone is in your vicinity. So your cognitive ability when your phone is on your desk, even if you're not doing anything with it, which is lower than if it's in your bag, which is still lower than if it's in another room. So its presence has a real ability to just distract you away from what you're doing, what you're thinking. And for young people, that's really difficult. And normally we always talk to year 11 about that when we're going into the kind of GCSE revision bits. Just sort of put your phone completely away, it'll distract you, it'll eat your time, all of those sorts of things. But actually, the more you think about it, the more you think, actually, for everybody, this is something that we need to know and understand and try to address. And then the last harm that Jonathan has is about addiction. And there is lots of research, a growing body of research now, to tell us that an overwhelming majority of young people are addicted to their mobile phone. And this is no surprise, because our mobile phones are designed to have us addicted to them, because what they're trying to pull is our attention, because attention you can sell, can't you? It's why adverts during Coronation Street traditionally always had a higher tariff. You always had to pay more to put your advert on during Coronation Street than you would some sort of spurious programme that was broadcast in the middle of the day. And it's exactly the same. The more traction something has, the more eyes that are looking at it, the more money that could generate. So these machines are designed to take our attention and to take our children's attention. And it's particularly worrying for our young people because of the way that your brain develops. That frontal part of your brain, that bit where you've got judgment and that you can think, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put that distraction away. All of those judgments, teenagers, they just don't have them because they're not developed at that point. It's just all of us were exactly the same. It's just how the brain develops. And therefore they are particularly vulnerable, and they are particularly targeted by big tech and these companies that want their attention. And we're allowing them to have it because we haven't really thought about it like that before. Andy and I were talking right at the beginning about the fact that lots of the way that social media particularly is designed is based upon psychologists, based upon Skinner's theory about how you get reward, the dopamine hit that you get when there's a reward, when someone's seen your message, when someone's liked your message, the checking to see if somebody's liked your message, to see if somebody's seen your message. And all of those things, those dopamine hits are massively, massively addictive. And there is beginning to become a theory of use of smartphones by children that suggests that the younger you have them, the worst your sort of well-being is in the longer term. And actually the amount of addiction, so how they are controlling your life, that seems to have a really big impact as well on well-being. And we all know that. We've all seen lots in the news, haven't we, about the huge crisis in children's mental health because of many factors, but the smartphone absolutely being one of them. So with all of these things, I decided I was going to take a stand. So in Ringwood from September, Year 7 are not allowed to have smartphones. They're most welcome to have brick phones, but we can't have any phones that connect to the internet because we don't want them on social media. And we can't have any phones with front-facing cameras because not only do they take pictures of bundling each other into the lockers, they take pictures of themselves and they post them online. And there are all sorts of problems that are associated with that, as you can quite imagine. And in doing that, when I've spoken to current Year 6 parents, I've said to them, if you haven't yet given your child a smartphone, because sometimes the move to secondary school is the moment, and that traditionally was the moment, although it is getting younger and younger. If you haven't done that yet, just hold off And you can hold off because you can say, oh, that head teacher, she won't let you have your phone. Let's just wait until we get into year 8, or let's just wait until we get a bit older. Now, I know the vast majority of children already have a smartphone coming into year 7. So I'm really hoping that not being able to have them in school will start to help change that culture a little bit. It will probably still be the case that they're still on their mobile phone between sort of 4 and 6 hours, I think, is the accepted amount of time out of school, but it might start to change things. We've also said that we're not managing anything that happens on a social media platform if you're not old enough, and the minimum age of most of them is 13. And again, I've said to parents, that's to empower you. So when they say, like the 3-year-old screamed, I want TikTok, you can say, well, you can't have it because if something goes wrong, school won't do anything about it. And it's to try and empower parents. What I've really hoped in doing this is that together as a community with my primary colleagues, we can start adopting similar types of stances in the schools so that actually we can get in there to probably year 3 before mobile phones are very prevalent, and just work with families and support parents to just hold off and delay giving children smartphones. And this isn't a sort of, nobody should have phones ever. I'd never give my phone up, and I'm not a prolific phone user, but it does have my life on it. So you couldn't give it up, could you? But it is about the right time, the right maturity levels, and understanding the risks. And you have to be old enough to understand the risks. And we always draw the analogy with driving. Driving's super handy, isn't it? Really, really helpful. But nobody is arguing that a 12-year-old ought to be able to drive. We all know that that's not safe. And in the same way, allowing a child to be ready to enter that digital world safely is what we're trying to achieve. So that's where we are at Ringwood. And we're really hoping that is a joint community work. And over the next couple of years, we come together and we support parents, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with parents to try and help them just delay, not feel like they're the only parent in the world not allowing their child to have a smartphone, and just keep our children as safe as we possibly can. Thank you.